Hey, this is Ben with Feud Rewind with a quick word from our first unofficial sponsor. Water. You need some. I need some. We all need some. We're made of it. Guess what? It comes in a bunch of different varieties. Hot, cold, frozen. You can get it flavored. You can get it plain. With bubbles, no bubbles, out of your tap, out of a bottle, out of a box. The possibilities are endless. Regardless, you need some. Before we get started, go get a glass. I'm going to get one too. We'll meet back here and start the show. Thank you so much. Water.
August 21st, 2005 saw the WWE holding their 18th annual Summerslam PPV event. The MCI Center in Washington, D.C. is witnessing a ladder match for the ages between Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio. The WWE Universe has been enveloped by this heated rivalry. This very personal blood feud between these two men from storied Lucha heritages. So, what exactly are we getting here? Mask versus mask? Nope. Legacy versus legacy? Career versus career? Nope. No. This, my friend, is a custody match to determine who the father of Dominick Mysterio. Okay, you know what? Hit the time machine gimmick. We're going to have to roll this one back with a rewind. Welcome to the Feud Rewind. I'm your host, Benson Lance. Before we get started this week, I just wanted to address something that has been brought to my attention over the last handful of episodes. I have been trying to do a deeper dive into the lives of the talent that we're discussing in order to ingratiate them more to you, the fan. I figured that a little bit more of a bio, a little bit more of a glimpse into their past was an addition to our narratives that helped paint a more complete picture. It never was, nor will it ever be, my intention to disrespect professional wrestlers by using their, quote, government name as opposed to their ring name. This was not done in an intentionally disrespectful way on my part. However, I can completely understand that exuding that level of familiarity with people that I don't have a personal relationship with can be a little disingenuous, and for that I apologize. No disrespect, and now that little bit of housekeeping is out of the way, let's hop into our rivalry for this week. Both Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio come from famed wrestling heritages. For those not that familiar with Lucha Libre, its history is rich and dates back into the 1800s. Both the Guerreros and the Mysterios have long, storied histories in Mexico. Gory Guerrero, for example, made his debut in September of 1937, and would not just have a remarkable in-ring career that not only saw him tag at times with Lucha legend El Santo, but Gory would also be credited with having an innovative mind, inventing a multitude of moves, most recognizable to the majority of fans being the camel clutch. Gory Guerrero got married, and all of his brothers-in-law were luchadors as well, and the family tree for the Guerreros has many branches. Not bloodline level branches, but impressive nonetheless. Gory and his wife would have 6 children of their own, 2 girls and 4 boys. All 4 of the boys would end up in professional wrestling. It's Gory's youngest, Eddie, that is probably the most well-known of the Guerreros, and one of the men responsible for sparking my interest in wrestling when I was younger. Viva la raza! Eddie was born in 1967 in El Paso, Texas. Growing up in a family such as his, it was almost predestined that Eddie would end up in the ring one day. His lucha career would start in the promotion CMLL, which is the oldest professional wrestling company still in existence. Wrestling under a mask as the original Mascara Magica, Guerrero would start building his name up in the lucha world. A move over to the AAA promotion led to teaming with the son of his father's old tag partner, El Hijo del Santo. Guerrero would ultimately turn heel on Santo and would align himself with Pacific Northwest wrestler Art Barr. Their team, La Pareja del Terror, the Terror Pair, would lead the duo into becoming no doubt the most hated tag team in Lucha Libre history. Joining their forces would be Conan, and the legendary stable Los Gringos Locos was born. Others would join and the group would grow into becoming the preeminent heel stable in wrestling for a time. La Pareja del Terror would feud with El Hijo del Santo and Octagon, with that feud culminating with the first ever Lucha Libre only pay-per-view event to air in the US during the When Worlds Collide event. This helped not only Lucha Libre gain national exposure in America for largely the first time, but it would also help draw attention to the young Guerrero. There was also interest in his friend and partner Art Barr. Unfortunately, Barr would pass away less than 3 weeks after this pay-per-view event due to a drug-induced heart attack. An iconic stint in New Japan as Black Tiger 2 cemented Guerrero's status as a top-level cruiserweight. Back stateside, runs in both ECW and WCW propelled Eddie firmly into the upper mid-card spotlight. Technically, Guerrero was beyond sound and had the pedigree to back it up due to his lineage. As is the case with most lucha wrestlers, it would be his height that would always prove to be his quote deficiency. Being 5'8" in the mid to late 90s was not a tenable height to be when you had aspirations to be a main event level talent. While he had lapses in judgment sometimes, as we all do, Eddie had a laser focus on making himself a main event talent, and history would show us that he would indeed get there. While he was on the shorter side of life in comparison to most talents, Eddie's enviable charisma could turn any rotten lemon you handed him into the finest lemonade you've ever tasted. His work as Latino Heat, his relationship with China as his mamacita, his run with cousin Chavo Guerrero Jr. as Los Guerreros. I'm quite literally wearing a Latino Heat hat as I record this. I cannot say enough just about how much classic work Eddie was able to produce in such a short period of time. His career in just the WWE is nothing short of outstanding when you combine his look in relation to Vince McMahon's usual preference for bigger men, and when you consider that he was only in the WWE for about 4.5 years. Looking into his trophy case, just for the WWE titles that he held, he's the 6th ever Grand Slam champion, having at one point held 4 of the major men's titles. It's not like Eddie is short on accomplishments. Focusing on these titles, it would be his last title reign, his last reign specifically as a tag team champion, that would lead us into our feud. The start of 2005 had seen Eddie coming off a legendary story with Kurt Angle, and looking for a new tag team partner as his longtime partner Chavo was, well, in the midst of finding his Anglo-American side with his new character, Kerwin White. Yeah, so new partner time, and this one would be a man that Eddie had plenty of history with his time in Lucha Libre and WCW. Rey Mysterio.
Move that jumping out the sky, Mysterio. Here we go, with the mask out, the girl that
Oftentimes in wrestling, the term spectacle is used. Hell, I've used it on this very show plenty of times. Usually this is in reference to the larger-than-life characters. Think your Awesome Kongs, your Brock Lesnar's, Andre the Giant, etc. There is more to being a spectacle than just being the biggest or the strongest, though. What if I told you that we would have a man, some would say generously being listed at 5'6", that due to being such a spectacle himself, would become almost synonymous with luchadors to most of the American audience? That man is the owner of the 619, Rey Mysterio. Born in 1974 in the San Diego suburb of Chula Vista, Mysterio is the nephew of famous luchador Well, Rey Mysterio. The Elder Mystery King wouldn't necessarily have the same type of fame that Gory Guerrero or El Santo had, for example. Nonetheless, the Elder Rey Mysterio would be very well respected and an acclaimed luchador in his own merit. But perhaps it would be through his training school that his presence is most well known and felt even to this day. One of his first graduates was his 14-year-old nephew. The younger Rey would wrestle under a few different names, most prominently La Lagartilla Verde and Colibri, before having the name Rey Mysterio Jr. bestowed upon him by his uncle. Seeing the improvement the younger Rey had been making, and having the elder Mysterio's son himself wrestling as El Hijo del Mysterio, Rey Mysterio was born in homage to the originator and to continue the excellence of the Mysterio lineage, so to speak. Mysterio would go on to have a multi-year and multi-promotional feud of sorts with Eddie Guerrero's cousin Juventud, which would grab the attention of ECW. From there, Mysterio Jr. would battle his way over to WCW to be showcased in their delightful times during Nitro, where men of my same size were showing me that talent under 6 feet tall could put on an entertaining show. Outside of Rey being unmasked in WCW, which I don't really want to talk about because it's so fucking disrespectful in lucha lore, his times outside of being signed in WWE in 2002 saw Mysterio Jr. becoming must-see television. There were other luchadors for sure, and definitely other talent that were doing more extreme versions of lucha moves. But Rey, due to his size and his talent in being able to execute a litany of crisp moves, simply had the advantage of being the talent forever fighting from underneath, so to speak. Psychologically, there's something disarming about Rey's stature, especially when you consider some of his opponents are over a foot taller than him and might be double his weight. For example, the man has pretty much been a babyface since the turn of the century, if you think about it. He'll always have to battle upwards, which can also be limiting as the ebb and flow of the crowd's emotional responses naturally lends talents to having to turn from babyface to heel and vice versa. Mysterio Jr. is one of the only examples that I can think of at the time of this recording that for almost as long as I've been a fan of his, he has always been on one side of the character coin. By 2005, Rey had already become a WWE Tag Team Champion with Rob Van Dam, but would lose the titles to the Basham brothers early on in the year due to Van Dam being injured. Our two forks in the road meet here as Rey and Eddie would team together to successfully win the Tag Team Championships at No Way Out in February. Throwing aside the more traditional booking formula, however, Eddie would take the advice of his cousin Chavo to instead have a one-on-one match against Rey at WrestleMania 21, because the two could, quote, bring the house down. So, indeed they did. At WrestleMania 21, April 3rd, 2005. The first WrestleMania to take place at the Staples Center in Los Angeles is opening with this Rey and Eddie match. 13 minutes of what can only be described as a Rey and Eddie match ends with Mysterio getting the pin and the win over Guerrero.
You hear the Eddie chants here. I don't blame Eddie. He's perplexed. What do you have to do to beat this guy?
That's a great question. A number of times here and a high elbow by Mysterio. Mysterio across the ring. Hurricane, shoulders down. He got it. He got it. Mysterio got him from out of nowhere. Mysterio got Eddie.
Here is your winner, Rey Mysterio.
From out of nowhere, Rey Mysterio.
Post-match, Eddie congratulates and embraces his partner, although he is visibly frustrated and upset. Part of Eddie's character was always being charismatic and overly cocky, and no doubt a nod to his own insecurities about his own reputation with the fans and standing within the company. With what should have been a friendly exhibition between two friends, the seeds are buried for this feud to grow. Eddie and Rey would start a short program with tag team M&M. The challenge was issued and accepted. On the April 25th, 2005 episode of SmackDown, Eddie and Rey would lose the tag team titles to M&M. They would receive a rematch the following week. During the rematch, Rey would accidentally hit Guerrero with a flying crossbody press. This would cause Eddie to finally snap and leave Ray to fend for himself. It was only at the urging of the crowd in attendance did Eddie return to the ring to save Ray, albeit too late, as Eminem would retain. The following week on SmackDown, GM Teddy Long books Mysterio in a street fight against Chavo Guerrero Jr., which Ray also wins. Post-match, Eminem comes down to the ring to lay the boots on Ray, and Eddie rushes out to clear house. Only Eddie instead fully turns on Ray, sending him into the ring posts, suplexing him into the ring steps, and finally reigniting their feud from their early luchador days. Eddie, at this point, would also start adopting a slightly different persona. Gone were the lowriders being driven to the ring, instead replaced with a slow, frowny walk and a darker remix of his entrance music. GM Teddy Long would book Guerrero and Mysterio against each other in a match at the Judgment Day pay-per-view. 12,000 Minnesotans packed into the Target Center on May 22nd, 2005 to witness the penultimate match on this card. This near 20-minute Ray and Eddie classic is a must-watch for sure, as is probably 98% of any of Ray's or Eddie's or a Ray and Eddie match. In one of the few referees where he would have the size advantage, Eddie is able to block most of Mysterio's offense early on. It's only when Mysterio is able to finally connect on a flying headbutt that Ray is able to gain some sort of an advantage. Chavo comes out for the ref distraction. Eddie goes for the chair, but Ray is able to counter with a low kick and a 619. Eddie is finally able to nail Ray with the chair, however, causing Mysterio to technically win via DQ. Although those chair shots would make the win definitely bittersweet, to say the least. On the June 30th episode of SmackDown is where our feud gets a little spicy. Interesting. Definitely. Eddie threatens to reveal a Mysterio family secret that involves their 8-year-old son, Dominick. Yeah. Dom. That kid has been at this shit for a long fucking time. Interestingly, the response from both the Mysterios and every Guerrero but Eddie is the same. They're pleading for Eddie not to reveal the secret. This actually went as far to be made the match stipulation for the match that was to happen at the next pay-per-view, the Great American Bash. The July 24th, 2005 pay-per-view would feature a match between Ray and Eddie again. The stipulation being, if Ray won, Eddie would not be able to reveal his secret ever. If Eddie won, Eddie would be able to air the Mysterio family's dirty laundry on live broadcast television. You might be able to guess where this is going. Mysterio once again is going to be able to score the pinfall victory in Guerrero. I don't mean to gloss over this or the previous matches, but trying to describe a Guerrero and Mysterio match is a feat that is near impossible to do without the visual medium. Hand to my heart, this talent is cut from the cloth that you could watch their match without the audio and still understand the story they're telling. Going reverse and not doing the play-by-play, which it was Michael Cole in this one, it's slightly more difficult, and not to, disparage myself, but I ain't no fucking Michael Cole. The following week on SmackDown, however, Eddie is going to lean into his bad self and, does the true dick move and reveals the secret anyway.
Dominick! Dominick! Ray is not your father! No es tu papá, mijo! The truth of the matter is, I'm your father, Dominick!
Ray is not Dominick's father. Eddie is. It wasn't just the fact that Eddie told this very deeply personal secret about someone else's business. He did it in the ring. with the Mysterio family in front of Dominic with an arena full of jaws on the ground. Now, since Eddie is in full-blown fifth gear cartoon level bad guy mode, we really know what Eddie is doing. All of this just to exact some petty revenge against Ray. Dominic's custodial rights are just the machine gun that Eddie is using to blow the Mysterio family apart, if you will. I really need to point out, once again, when you go back to watch this, you gotta remember Dominic's 8. His acting chops and his ability to convey emotional weight are really what puts the chef's kiss on this angle. I mentioned last episode how I refer to watching wrestling as, quote, watching my stories, much in the same way our moms in the 80s referred to watching their soaps. This is a goddamn telenovela. The following weeks would see Eddie start to reveal the dark details of the secret during his bedtime stories segments. In his first story, he claimed that he went through some hard times in his family.
You don't know what hard times are, Daddy.
No, not those hard times, but hard times are hard times, Dusty. Thank you. Anyway, during a time where Eddie and Vicky were separated, Eddie happened to have a entanglement with someone, of which a child was produced. The classic child out of wedlock situation. We've all been there. Am I right? For the record, no, I've never been there. Incidentally, simultaneously to Eddie getting this news about his upcoming bundle of joy, his friend Ray and his wife Angie were, quote, having trouble conceiving. Sort of insinuating that Ray is shooting blanks, if you will. As Eddie wanted nothing to do with this child and Ray couldn't sire an heir on his own, Eddie allowed the Mysterios to adopt the child, albeit under the table, no paperwork. Not only is this an emotional burden to bear for the Mysterio family, but it should also be noted that this is a tenuous situation for the Guerrero family, as Eddie and Vicky's own daughters are also involved in this. Truly special for everyone to come together to make this work. During this second story, that's where Eddie goes full nuclear and drops official custody papers on Ray. Boom. Eddie really wants to impart a lot of pain on Mysterio. During their battles, Ray keeps on coming out on top. It would seem that a legal battle might be more in Eddie's favor. Eddie wants his son back. Our feud enters the courtrooms of Night Court. Yeah, fantastic show. It's a show about the night shift at a court. Harry Anderson is the judge? John Larroquette? No? Richard Mall? You're missing out if you don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But no, not a crossover. Just being silly. And no, unlike an actual custody hearing, we ain't going to court. We're going to decide this in the squared circle, just like our forefathers intended. Summerslam is going to be our deciding event, and the match stipulation, if you don't know, well, now you're gonna, is a Dominick Mysterio on a pole match. No. Actually, it was a ladder match with the custody papers for Dom hanging above the ring in a briefcase. August 21st, 2005 saw 18,000 pack into the MCI Center in Washington, D.C. The third match on our card saw Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio in a ladder match for the custodial rights to Dominick Mysterio. Hey there, this is Benzo with Feud Rewind, coming at you with a quick word from our second unofficial sponsor, the sun. That's right. Summertime is here, and the living, if your living is like mine, is extremely difficult. But what's not difficult is popping in your earbuds, putting on those headphones, using a little Bluetooth speaker, and going out into the sun while you listen to this podcast. You and me, let's go get some vitamin D while we enjoy the sun. Thank you, sun. Now back to the show.
the custody of a child will be determined in a match, in a ladder match.
Oh, fucking wrestling, man. It seems almost a prerequisite to give these two 20-ish minutes to let them cook, and that's exactly what Ray and Eddie do, because why the fuck wouldn't they? Both the Guerrero and Mysterio families are ringside to witness the outcome of this bout. Mysterio uses his speed advantage to stay on the defensive, seemingly not wanting to impart any damage on his friend, whereas Eddie is dead set focused on inflicting as much damage possible to Mysterio. At one point, Eddie is ascending the ladder to grab the briefcase when young Dominick himself enters the melee to shake the ladder. This causes enough of a distraction that Ray is able to mount somewhat of a combo. Later on, Guerrero is able to hit his trademark Three Amigos suplex combo onto some ladders, putting Ray down for the conceivable count. As Eddie is climbing the ladder, none other than Vicky Guerrero enters the ring.
Vicky is in the ring.
After some self-deliberation, she pushes that ladder over. Using the same ladder, Ray is able to finally complete his ascent and finally win the custodial rights to his son, as Eddie watched on being held back by Vicky. Ray grabs the briefcase and embraces his wife and son outside the ring. Eddie is still in the ring and throwing a temper tantrum due to his loss by throwing the ladders around the ring. In order to stop this petulant display and also acting as a nice little coup de grace on our feud, Ray would slide back into the ring and deliver a headshot to Eddie with the briefcase. Symbolically, this could be seen as a natural recoil to Eddie trying to use something so dastardly as custodial rights in a rivalry. What really helped carry the emotional rate across the finish line, in my opinion, was the actions of Vicky in the final moments of this match. No doubt Eddie, Ray, and Dom are doing a lot of the heavy lifting during the story as they are the primary focuses, but Vicky really is sort of a linchpin that holds it all together. Her actions don't strike me as the jilted wife who's trying to get back at her husband for his indiscretions. Rather, her actions come off as the selfless parent, even if those actions do result in anger at Eddie for using a child to get revenge on an opponent. Even if Dominick might not genetically be a Mysterio in the storyline, Dominick is still a Mysterio in heart, which is what really matters. The intricacies of emotional sinew that comes from loving a child are somewhat indescribable. Being a parent myself, rewatching these segments and reliving the story hits an entirely different core than when I watched this in real time as an early 20s doofus that didn't have the emotional capacity to comprehend the amount of depth to this situation. Just step back. If what Eddie is saying is true, Dominick is a Guerrero by blood. Even though Dominick isn't born by Vicky, the heartbreak it would cause to have to hold back your husband in order for the only dad that Dominick has ever known to remain that only dad, well, that sort of makes me misty just trying to describe it to you. Mechanically, I would consider this the end of our feud. A few weeks later, Guerrero would be the victor in a steel cage match over Mysterio, but the custody of Dominick had already been settled by this point. After this feud, Mysterio would go on to have what is still an ongoing and storied career as one of the most recognizable luchadors and wrestlers in general of all time. He would break through the short guy glass ceiling and become a decorated champion in WWE, becoming world champion at WrestleMania 22. He would stay with the Fed until 2015, having by this time wrestled for almost 30 years and putting many miles on his body. A much acclaimed run in Lucha Underground and a return to AAA would lead to a ultimate return to the WWE, where he is still there to this day and currently a member of the LWO. Ray is a AAA and WWE Hall of Fame member, and his career achievements would certainly deserve a podcast episode all to themselves. Guerrero would go on to start a new rivalry with World Heavyweight Champion Batista, culminating in what would be Eddie's final pay-per-view match at No Mercy. On November 13th of 2005, Eddie Guerrero was unfortunately found by his cousin Chavo in Eddie's hotel room, unconscious. The 38-year-old left us far too soon, as I now realize that I myself am now older than Eddie Guerrero ever was, which is a fucking bizarre statement, to put it lightly. His legacy was one of supreme in-ring talent, unparalleled charisma, and a myriad of moments that make his short time on this earth feel like a century. Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio are both generational talents, coming to my stateside TV at a time where myself and the world at large was at the beck and call of whatever was on our sets. And the ultimate bow on the package that is really a lifelong rivalry between two of Lucha's most prized talent of our era. Eddie and Rey pulled the curtain back to cover our eyes with a soul-touching drama involving family dynamics that were easy to write off as corny, and maybe at times a bit too blue for some, but a story that was unique in its genesis. To be able to execute this story without it coming off as trite or filler truly takes everyone involved, all the Guerreros and all the Mysterios, to hit their cues and deliver the performance of their lifetimes. Thankfully, they were able to nail this to such a degree that for a brief moment, in the summer of 2005, we were able to suspend our disbelief as two grown men tried to climb a ladder to gain custody of a child. Hell yeah. To the entire Guerrero family, my greatest appreciation. To the entire Mysterio family, the same. To Rey, thank you so much. To Eddie, words just can't express how much you meant to my life, so I just thank you so much. Oh, emotional. Anyway, that is going to take us to the end of our feud for this week. I want to thank you so much for listening. Be sure, if you haven't already, to follow, like, and subscribe on whatever platform you happen to be listening on. If you have a feud you'd like to hear rewound, or you have any other comments, please feel free to reach me on the socials as Feud Rewind. And you can also drop me an email at feudrewind@gmail.com. I am really showing my age this episode. Drop me a line? What the fuck? Anyway, fellow fan, I'm your host, Ben Zalance, and I'll roll it back with you next week with another feud to rewind.